Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of On the Wire. Today, we are going to chat with Bill Inman and talking about the current state of crypto. But I think this conversation is going to go a lot of different ways. Bill is a very dynamic character with his hands kind of in a lot of different projects. And so I'm also joined by Kyle Dolan, CTO of Wire Network. And like I said, Bill is sitting here and we're going to just jump all over the place. As always, the comments are live and available on screen. If anybody's out there, hello to Crypto 6 Foot. I see Leonid, hello. When you unlock token from first node, we will get to some of those questions. I don't know if we'll be answering some of that stuff, but yeah, feel free to leave your questions. I see Alpha Sigma Capital is in the house. Hello, Crypto 6 Foot. Hello. What's up, Kyle? Got any thoughts? And we'll get to Bill here in just a second. Kyle, any thoughts? Last week was fun.
I'm excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, Bill, what's going through your head? First
Well,
first time
always,
streaming.
but-
Like, what are you thinking here?
No, first of all, I'm excited to be here. I'm always excited to talk to Kyle because just a brilliant man and he's so technically proficient, but always comes around to deep thinking with Kyle, and I enjoyed those conversations, and I expect we'll have a sprinkle of that today. But excuse me, I don't usually talk like in the sexy voice. I've been under the weather because I've been traveling all around the world, but I'm really excited to be here with you guys.
Yeah, give us that smooth, low radio voice.
I'm not trying to do that.
Okay, so we're going to take it into this view. We're going to go through. We always do a quick little outline. Recap last week. We did a Satoshi roundtable with Kyle and Ken. And we had Enzo on from Alpha Sigma, and we talked about the Satoshi roundtable last week. The week before that was interoperability. Next week, we're going to talk about kind of the nodes and how things inside of the Wire network work. But this week is all about Bill. So we're going to introduce Bill. We're going to talk about projects he's excited about. Like I said, the current state of crypto. We're going to talk about what mass adoption looks like in the crypto industry, emerging trends in technology, things like that. Again, I said I think the conversation is going to go all over the place. And of course, we'll answer your questions as we go through. So, Bill, do you want to just take a second and tell us about yourself? I mean, I know you've had a number of successful exits. You've been involved in a ton of different projects, all the way from AI to blockchain. What's kind of currently on the roster, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do it. I don't like talking about myself, but for the sake of the podcast, I'll do it. It's kind of the old quote, which is the harder you work, the luckier you are, which was said by, I think Bo Jackson said that at one point, one of my favorite athlete of all time. But I've been on the grinds, for half my life. I'm 50-ish now. And since I was 25, I've been an entrepreneur, and even before that, and just feel really fortunate to be in the middle of so many converging technologies, because blockchain obviously is revolutionary, and we haven't even really scratched the surface of what it can do. But when you combine that with other converging tech and emerging tech and bleeding edge like AI and robotics and AR, VR and metaverse and everything that people call Web3, and wrap those things into smart cities, we're living in like the most exciting time in human history. So, but my background is, as I mentioned, I've been an entrepreneur for many years, lucky enough to have multiple exits. I've led intrapreneur and entrepreneur type programs and companies from zero to one with the 3.2 billion, with 2 billion in acquisitions and $1 billion plus in organic growth. I spent a lot of time in the human capital industry, which I was always pushing for future of work, which is a term that's used now, and helped to innovate there. And then I found my way to blockchain and AI and robotics and metaverse and AR, VR. That's where all the different things come in over the past couple of years. And I've had multiple exits. One recent exit I had was my first patent was a blockchain patent, and it was in the human capital industry. Followed that up with an AI patent. Have multiple in the pipeline now, and sold a company to job.com, which is one of the leading technology companies in the future of work industry. And they've run with it. I'm looking forward to them doing amazing. So that was my most recent exit in 2021. And then I got involved with Singularity Net, which is a tokenized nonprofit out of the Netherlands, probably, if not the one of the world's most exciting and foremost decentralized AI projects, which I'm sure we'll talk about AI a little bit today. And that gets you into a lot of different places. I've also worked with Hanson Robotics, which is a partner to Singularity Net, and they're the makers of Sophia the robot. And I actually have a robot at my house. So for those of you that know Sophia, that's a big deal, and super excited to be working with them. And then I've worked across the Singularity Net ecosystem with companies like Singularity DAO, which is DeFi oriented, NewNet, which is compute power. I also run one of the spinoffs called Twin Protocol, which is basically your mind stored in the blockchain, so you can basically monetize it if you wanted to as a subject matter expert, and have your virtual contractor out there for you making money. And other projects too, which we can talk about and may come up. So just a lucky guy, but I think encapsulating just on the grind, like 247, to the point where, you travel the world and get a little sick from time to time because you're working so hard. But I love it. I love everything that's going on. One of your guests that's here today is Alpha Sigma Capital and Enzo, another guy that's a true groundbreaker. Love him. He's invested in a couple of these projects, and just love being around people like all of you. It's a fantastic time with great people, but still unknown, right?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Twins project. I got to see that in NFT NYC when they were doing a presentation at one of those events you guys were hosting.
Well, it's come a long ways. It's crazy that I was talking about NFT NYC today, like it's coming up. It feels like it was just yesterday. And of course, NFT LA, which is going on a different name, I think Outland or something like that. I think better than I do. And I know you'll be there. But Twin now just had one of its twins. Twin is partnered with a fantastic partner named EDU. They bring the avatar and the AIs. Twin Protocol brings the blockchain. We just had Nova, the avatar newscaster, on the Web3 show on Fintech TV, the very first episode, just yesterday. So if you go to fintech.tv, you'll see it there. So it's come a long way, Kyle, since you heard about it last summer.
Very cool.
Yeah. A lot of good people there.
Yeah. I think there's so much happening in the space. I'm on fintech.tv. I don't know if there was like a specific way to place it.
I could drop the link in here.
Yeah, nice. We can pull that up.
As we go.
Yeah, I think there's so much. And I pulled up, as you were talking, I was kind of pulling up some of these projects. And it's so wild because this is something that there's a lot of people out there that get overwhelmed because the world in this space is evolving so quickly that like even one small little sector seems like it's hard to keep up with, let alone like your fingers and pulse in multiple ones. So when I talk to people that are kind of outside of this, and it's like drinking from a fire hose sometimes, it's like you got to be a little careful with how much you throw out there because this seems like there's so many great innovations kind of happening every day. You turn on the news, every hour the news cycle updates, and it's like AI is evolving into this, blockchain this, scam that. And maybe this is a perfect time to go into like, let's jump down. Actually, let's get back. Let's just go into the current state of crypto. We'll get back to what you're excited about. Let's talk a little bit about current state of crypto because this is kind of like as the news evolves, as things come out, people are getting a little scared, right? And I know fear is a driving force in a lot of things. Emotion gets people excited one way or another, especially when it comes to markets. But I think there's a lot of technology kind of growing under the scenes or behind the scenes. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of infrastructure grow. We've talked a lot about that on the past few streams. So talk to me a little bit about how you deal with that or what you see as you go around. You're talking with people in different parts of the world. You're interacting with, different cultures and folks who are kind of solving the same problems in different ways. So just give me a snapshot. What do you see as you talk to people? Are they scared? Are they excited? Or, what's kind of the vibe out there?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm lucky enough to talk to a lot of different people. And a lot of brilliant people, like Dr. Ben Goertzl I work with at Singularity Net. You may be aware of him. He's known as the father of artificial general intelligence and the whole ecosystem there. I mean, there's just some brilliant people. I've already mentioned Kyle. Enzo, another one from a finance perspective. I'm able to synergize all that stuff, and my brain doesn't stop working to my detriment. So I kind of come up with philosophies around this. But the movement, I think that we have to be reminded that the Bitcoin white paper was formulated around decentralization, and decentralization is the movement, with blockchain being a key tool in that. It's not just about blockchain though, decentralization. It's about human thought and philosophy and what people think about that. And of course, crypto being a use case on blockchain. This is how I see it. And so I started in blockchain by creating enterprise blockchain patents. So I looked at this from a very enterprise perspective, because a lot of my life was invested in selling to enterprises. That's what I thought. And I'm actually seeing that come full circle now. So I'm focusing on blockchain. Obviously, I meant decentralization is something we could talk about for a very long time, because you talk about part of the key to blockchain helping decentralization is borderless, permissionless, immutable. And some of those things were lost a little bit in the crypto boom of 2021, right? And if you saw those videos from way back, like Bryant Gumbel on the Today Show going, "Hey, what's an email? What is this? Is it called an @ So you've probably seen that if you're in technology at some point. I mean, we're so early on these things that people can hijack the technology sometimes for their own personal benefit. And people have done very well and very fast, and sometimes very young. And they deserve it in many cases, right? Because they're just brilliant young kids and adults that understand the technology and are ahead of it. And I know, because I'm always trying to get ahead of future tech and frontier tech to see where it's going, because it's exciting. But decentralization is a movement, and blockchain is the tool, and crypto is a use case. So when you get back to what's key here about blockchain for me to start with is immutability. The analogy I tell people, and it's a little bit outlandish, but bear with me, is that after we die, it would be interesting if we could see a list of how many gallons of water did you drink, how many miles did you walk, how many friends did you have, things like that. The immutability of blockchain really is exciting from that perspective, because it can track all these things about ourselves and hopefully do that in a way that only we can access it and share it with others. So I go back to that primary kind of use case of blockchain. I'm excited about that. I also go back to the borderless aspect of blockchain, to be able to cut out middlemen and go from one person to the next like that. And that's where the regulation comes in, because the centralized powers, whether it be governmental or institutional, they don't want it to be decentralized, because hundreds of years of wealth have been built on top of centralization. And by the way, this protects us. I'm a fan of regulatory regulation coming into the industry, because hopefully it'll stop the bad actors, which are giving us a bad name. I know that Wire Network, for example, and what Kyle and Ken and everybody's building over there, it's revolutionary. I love the interop side of it. As we know, in full disclosure, building multiple projects on it, because I don't think that building tokens on an island in non-interop is the way to go. I just don't see how that's centralized, isn't it? So I think we're seeing the struggle between centralized and decentralized. And some bad actors have come into this movement. And of course, it's the news. So they're going to focus on the negative, and that's what we're going to hear about. But I'm super excited about this era of utility that goes back to borderless, permissionless, immutable, taking middlemen out, eliminating fraud, all the things that blockchain, the promise of blockchain really revolves around. I'm excited about going back to that and creating utility around those things, because in industries, it's going to cut cost. It's going to create efficiencies. It's going to help people get more jobs. And by the way, we're going to need it with everything that's happening with generative AI now. We need new ways to find a job quicker, for example. So one project, Perk Protocol, which I'm on, will help people manage their career and understand how to get to where they want to go faster. Whereas Twin Protocol allows an individual to upload their mind and share their mind with others for a token or two. So I'm excited about the era of utility. I'm excited about the regulation and getting out of just the speculative aspects, which are totally natural for a new technology, because there's so much to do around blockchain that hasn't been done.
Yeah. Kyle, I want to throw it to you in that kind of in that light, because there's a lot of things there that Bill said he's excited about. Obviously, there's lots of projects, but there's also, like there's a lot of concern. There's not a lot of clarity from a regulatory standpoint. There's a lot of excitement, and it's like this clash of kind of things that are happening. So from a technical standpoint, from a developer standpoint, talk to me a little bit about, like the opportunities that we have. Why is it Like why is it okay to be excited now, even in a downturn, while people are, scared a little bit? Why is this a perfect time to kind of be building some of that infrastructure and being, laying the groundwork? I'll let you just riff on that for a minute.
I mean, today and yesterday have been good, like across the board for cryptos. I think in the markets, I see a lot of people excited. It's always been cycles, and it's always, the people that really understand what this tech means. I mean, I spent a lot of time in enterprise software development, and the amount of barriers that inhibit innovation, it's crazy. Most people don't know, because a lot of times it's easier to protect a line of revenue just by not having open source involved and not being interoperable with other softwares or systems. You see it in basically like every industry.
I want to say, I want to ask a question here, and both of you can chime in on this, because you said something about the sentiment yesterday and today has been good in crypto, and I wonder, is that part of the problem right now, that people are just looking to kind of get that big win tomorrow, right? Like we've lost track. Like in the financial markets, like when you make an investment, there's never this idea that like, I'm going to get rich off of this tomorrow, right? There's like this, okay, we've got 20 years from now, 30 years, 40 years from now, there's a long-term thing. Even like a bond or something like that, it's a 6-month or a year maturity, or there's like some kind of term that's like further out. Is the crypto industry holding itself back with this like panic to just like, oh, it's down today, so everything's dead. Oh, it's up today, everything's great. It's like, it's almost like a bipolar kid, like a bipolar emotional, like mental state in the crypto space. And I don't know, is it just because it's so small? Is it because it's, I mean, obviously it's inherently volatile because it's new tech, but like, is there a limitation there because people are kind of short-sighted in this space? I think a lot of investors want to see those quick returns. They see people getting rich, and just like people want to go viral and be the next Instagram influencer, other people want to get rich by investing in the next coin. And so there's this like, churn sometimes. And I wonder like how much of that is holding the crypto industry back as a whole, and how much of that is kind of necessary to spark the growth forward. Happy to hear your thoughts.
Well, we're seeing a lot of that, correct? Like we had a ton of damage done to the industry by things that aren't even necessarily crypto. And that has a lot of that's played out, I think. And you
played out. What do you mean, like played out? Like it's over, or like it happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big problem areas have kind of blown up, and that damage has been done. And then on the other side of it, like as far as the expectation with crypto assets, it's like crazy. You have like big protocols that are structured almost to try and be that, and then people don't necessarily understand if there's a connection between like what they're proposing they're going to do and what's actually happening. You just kind of have a lot of, gold rush style things happening.
So you don't think there's more like hiding below the surface right now? You think like the worst of it's behind us? You don't think like there's some other FTX in the wings, or some type of scam somewhere, or something? Like you just kind of think we've seen the worst of it?
I think so, but I'm definitely not an expert on that part of the space. I mean, I'm looking at things from people that I'm talking to have a really good understanding of, the benefits of, being on a blockchain and not having a financial product that is mimicking a crypto asset. Like your own keys, your own authority, that's really become important. And we've always, like, everything we build is that way. We understand that has to become more usable and workable for everybody. Like you can't have, a big complicated process the first time you want to use something that's on a blockchain. But the alternative also can't be some centralized organization is going to protect you and hold your stuff for you to make it easy. And that's why you kind of see strategies in the way we handle onboarding and introductions to these new concepts They're all oriented around preserving like a self-custody workflow and interacting natively with the blockchain and not adding, centralized layers or entities in part of that.
God, I want to dive in like a million different ways there, but I want to give Bill a chance to get back to like the question I asked before about, the crypto industry, the short-term temperament, the bipolar nature of it, the volatility of it, et cetera. You have any thoughts on whether or not that's like a blessing or a curse to the industry?
I mean, FOMO has driven the market over the past 2 cycles. I mean, I do it to myself. I look at tokens that I've seen. I'm like, wow, I can't believe that person did this and did that, or that token has gone up so much. So FOMO is always going to be there. It's human nature. And now we're in this era. The internet, mobile's fully matured, and people can invest quickly, and they can use exchanges to get there, and they can put their own money in, and it's a challenge. Now, some of the stats that are compelling or not compelling is that when we started this last cycle, there were about 9,000 tokens, and now there are over 22,000 on CoinMarketCap. So that's a big jump. Another challenge is not a lot of the people who raise money on roadmaps have developed software before. And eventually you got to develop software so people can utilize or utility the tokens that you're doing. But there's a lot of, youngins and other people who are just like, yeah, I can raise this money. I can build a good deck. I can do a trailer for an NFT, or I could, show the token, but they never knew how to build technology. So we got to get to this utility level. And by the way, a lot of them wanted to build pure Web3. Like, let's decentralize this. Let's put this in the metaverse. They forgot about the fact that most of the world lives in Web 2. Some of the world lives in Web 1. Like, Web 1 is you got an email address. Web 2 is you got a social account. Web 3 is you got a wallet. So to encapsulate things, we have to bring people along this journey that are users. We have to, first of all, create utility and build software to do that, and do that in ways that works in the real world. A lot of the people who raise money wanted to do that, but didn't know how. Thus, their token failed. So they were relegated to memes and other things to pump the token price. So I'm of the philosophy that now we need to be in a Web 2.5 realm where you help people accumulate and gamify and leverage tokens from an exchange and a redemption standpoint. But maybe they just want to redeem for IRL, in real life stuff, instead of a token. So I think we need to bring the market along through Web 2.5 to ultimately Web 3, and hopefully capitalize companies that can execute on their roadmap, because there's a lot of impressive roadmaps and very few of them ever got to step 1.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that people are learning a lot of lessons. I'm seeing this in a parallel industry. There's the visual software development space. It's kind of brewing right next to like software development, and it's goes under the moniker of no code. And what you see is all of these people getting into a new space that they now have access to the tools, but they don't necessarily understand how the tools work underneath. And so that leads to a little bit of naivety in the product or in what they build or in how they sell. And so it's like it's opening the door to a lot of people to have this skill set and to have these tools, but sometimes the output they create is less than ideal because they haven't learned the lessons that you might learn if you went up through the traditional approach. And I think that's almost like a requirement of a nascent industry like this. And I think we're seeing the similar things that we saw in like the early financial market evolution, penny stocks and lots of Ponzi schemes and lots of crappy, pump and dump and little, like all that stuff happened in the early days of the stock market, in the early days of finances. And if you look back through the history of dollars, like these things have been taking place with every financial system that's been built since financial systems have been being built. And so like the idea that it's just now happening in crypto, a lot of people take it as a sign like, oh, crypto's over. But I typically see that as like, no, crypto's actually now money, right? This is now a real money because people are pulling off frauds that they've been doing since the beginning of money with this thing that people are saying is not money. And it's like, no, there's a conundrum here. So it's like, the things that people think are like indicators that this thing is dying or that crypto is, like, I don't know, hit some kind of roadblock, to me is really an indicator that it's a real thing. And that's where the interesting part of what's happening right now is, going back to this, how do we bring the people along? And you talked about, that with the Web 2.5, we talk about building an on-ramp. We talk about that 2.5 all the time because there needs to be some blending. And I kind of see it happening again, going back to like the visual software development space, this no code space. I saw a guy who came out of that space, just recently did this cool NFT project and it took off and went crazy. And so you're seeing people, these problem solving skills, these tools, these things that are empowering a lower level of problem solver to get their hands in the game and to kind of throw their hat in the ring. And it creates a little chaos, but it also creates a lot of opportunity. It creates a lot of like collisions that had not happened in the past. And I'll be interesting to see, over the next 6 months, a year, how does that play out? You know, I
Well, it
don't know.
goes so fast in the space because everything is permissionless. So you have it all happening really rapidly. If it can be done, if there is a way to exploit the system, it's going to happen really fast and really heavy. The good thing is that's how you develop a hardened system. When all the code is open source and like anybody in the world can literally start messing around with it and even contributing if they want to. It's a hyper speed, you know, compared to where we were even just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
a good and a bad thing too, because I mean the exploits get exploited just as bad, right? I'm sorry, go ahead, Bill.
I agree with you. First of all, the no code space, I love that. You know, Salesforce.com had declarative code and had, you know, WYSIWYG kind of drag and drop apps. And that's nice to hear that. It does open up for a lot of less technical people the ability to develop apps and get those out there quickly. But there's a maturity that they lack when they do that. So I think that Kyle hit was right. I mean, we're talking, you mentioned as well, we're in the era, every era is cycle and waves. Take Industrial Revolution 3.0. Right, Industrial Revolution. We're in Industrial Revolution 4.0 right now, which basically is AI merges with humans, and humans are more productive. Industrial Revolution 5.0 is robotics and AI merge with humanity, and it's a different realm. Maybe we reach the singularity where AI is as intelligent as any one human. Industrial Revolution 3.0 was the PC. So you had the dot-com boom and bust. You had basically stocks rising and falling. You had in the 80s multiple stock market breakdowns. This happens. Look at the dot-coms, Pets.com, Peapod, all those $100 million companies, when $100 million in 1998 was worth $1 billion investment today, basically, more or less, maybe a little bit less to be technical about it, that those went away. So this is nothing new. When you introduce new technology, you have actors, sometimes who mean well, like Pets.com or eToys, they wanted to sell toys. It just, the model didn't work out because the technology wasn't mature enough to actually pull it off. Went out of business, the investors lost hundreds of millions of dollars, which today would be a bargain. So the amplitude and the cycle time between these cycles and waves is collapsing so fast because technology is building on technology now. We're seeing with generative AI that, and I use it all the time, like every day now, we're seeing how powerful it is to alleviate the things we used to have to stop and think. Send it to ChatGPT or Jasper or some other kind of thing, and boom, you got ideas like that. So yes, the cycle and waves are coming fast. And yes, we need to bring people along as quickly as we can through Web 2.5 to Web 3 so they can understand it.
Yeah. Kyle, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too. We're seeing, Raymar actually showed me a proposal to restrict general, public people being able to acquire lots of GPUs or hardware that enables you to run your own neural net. We really need decentralization in these new emerging technologies like AI, especially. Like I think it's now become, in the last couple months, widely known how powerful AI can be, and it wasn't like that before. I know, Bill, you've understood this for a long time, and I like to think that I have too. But it's crazy. I wouldn't have predicted that. Literally, like everybody on the planet now has a decent understanding of how powerful these tools are going to be. And we're going to see crazy regulation and proposals and things happen over there. So
for sure, at Singularity Net, the tagline is beneficial, decentralized, artificial general intelligence, or human level intelligence that nobody owns that's good for humanity. And Microsoft had made a bold move recently, investing in OpenAI, throwing $10 billion at it. They were behind on training data, and they leapfrogged back to like being a market leader. But even today, and they're taking their licks, and Microsoft's been around, so they know what they're doing. The AI is arguing with people. So that's a little scary. Just like this level of nascent AI is arguing with people when people interact with it on Bing. So totally we need to decentralize this in some way, because the centralized powers who understand that reaching human level intelligence with AI, throwing that in a various form of interface, humanoid robot, dog robot, drone, metaverse, avatar, chatbot, behind the scenes, powerful. So decentralizing that in some way so that we can counter the centralized powers gaining this superpower. It's like Marvel.
How do you,
I think it's important, Kyle, and I'm glad you brought that up.
going back to like something you said before though, like how do you get a central power to give it up. And I know, Kyle, you know, like some of what you said, right? You put it out there, you make it open, that spreads virally. As soon as people get a taste of that, it can take off. But, you know, like we've seen democracy and kind of mob rule lead societies in a bad direction over and over and over, right? And so I get the concept of decentralizing. Bill, earlier you talked about regulations being good, and I agree that some regulations, at least some clarity, some clear set of rules that everyone gets to play by. This is a smart thing. This is the ideal format for what regulation should be, so that everyone can understand, like, okay, these are the rules of the game. You break the rules, you got problems. But if you play inside these rules, like, you know, game on. So I mean, how do you make sure that the centralized powers don't kill off the good things before the decentralized thing gets to take off in the auspices of protecting and securing the, you know, whatever, all of it?
A lot of innovation comes from the open source community, and it's something that even very large organizations can't look away from because there's so much value there. So that's why we see Silicon Valley getting really involved in open source communities and trying to even get their technologies no longer, you know, wholly maintained internally as a strategy to become more profitable. So it's almost like getting to a tipping point where it's going to be very difficult to compete with the open source community on innovating. Even like a lot of the models that are being used in OpenAI or open source, the barrier to entry is compute, because not everybody has like you know, a bunch of data centers laying around and unlimited money to throw at that. But the blockchain's always been good at like democratizing compute. And the work we're doing, like on creating like a trustless hardware stack where it's a more sophisticated level of compute, and that kind of opens some doors to get really efficient there. That I think is, and other orgs working on it, like the core boot community, dealing with those firmware issues and finding, you know, like really clever ways to lower the cost of having decentralized compute. That leads to, you know, what we're like, what they're trying to do at Singularity. There's a lot of challenges. I mean, it just makes my mind race thinking about all the challenges with decentralizing AI and ensuring that it's always staying that way. But yeah, it needs to happen. And I think there's so many cool innovations happening over there. I'm not seeing anything else in the space like even close.
Why would I just, as a devil's advocate, why would open source win now? Right? Like I hear you. I agree with you at a certain level. I think open source is important. But in my mind, you know, like Linux is open source, and you know, the people who monetize that are not the open source community who built Linux, or the people who are generating the max value from that are not the people who built it. You know, corporations came in and they took the open source work and they kind of monetized it. And then there's this other thing that I think about, like open source to the average person who's not technical is really irrelevant because they don't have a way to like check the source. Like most people who are not a developer, and sure, you can then trust that a couple developers or some developers or a developer, somebody has checked it. But you know, like does the like, as we're talking about the average person, the evolution of crypto, like open source, as we've seen kind of in the past, and like I get we want to believe this stuff, but like, will the market actually allow that to play out? Will somebody come in and take your open source innovation at the last minute and then turn it into something proprietary because the open source community can't like now make a decision because there's too many cooks in the kitchen? You know, like will this be problems down the road? Are these things to think about? Do you have any thoughts on that, either Bill or Kyle?
Yeah, I mean,
you're talking about solving the world's problems. These are big philosophical things, and open source obviously is a good path to follow. And you brought up Linux, and you're absolutely right. Red Hat monetized that and it reaped the economic benefits. But it does help that people can develop a solution on top of Linux whenever they need to and want to. So compliance, by the way, going back to the original kind of impetus for this question, is a micro niche thing. It's culture and geographic what's in the US might be different than the Middle East and Asia and Australia and so forth. So, and stifling innovation is a huge problem because compliance can actually slow things down quite a bit. And then as a country or as a culture, you fall behind because some of the smart city projects, these mega projects that are growing throughout the world that integrate blockchain sometimes, and because blockchain for decentralization, sometimes they do, but AI and robotics and things like that. These are huge projects. Like I just came from Saudi Arabia at LEAP, which is a huge tech conference now, 260,000 registrants. You look at the Line as a project, LINE, if you don't know it, it's a 150-story building that, I'm an American, so it's 100 miles long, right? It's huge project. And, to me, like rivals the engineering of the pyramids, the Line does. So, they're not as encumbered with certain regulations over there. So they're able to make things happen and put these big mega projects on the table, and they're working to fund it and move forward. So there's a case to be made for open source. I hope that from when it comes to AI, that the innovation that can come from decentralizing stored in the blockchain, the category, a big factor here is, will blockchain take hold? So we as individuals own our own data and own our own code. And then we can inject those things into these smart cities or even small projects or AIs. I think another thing, and we're doing this at EDU, is to put filters on these big AIs so that you can have some kind of filtering engine to verify. I know that on the Wire network, verification is a big aspect of that in KYC. We're going to need that in front of AI. So you don't just take what AI sends you at face value, but you have your own curation engine so that you can do that. So I feel like open source, AIs to double check, and then just the power of blockchain to basically create ownership of data and thoughts for the individual are all kind of come together to help. It's a big fight, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And it always is. But you can really look at previous generations of the internet, and it's pretty clear that open source is one, just by what's running on, the lion's share of all the servers that power the internet. Organizations do monetize, but that's kind of like the point. A lot of these people that contribute get rewarded. It's a way to take something to market and also have proof. Like even if they're using GitHub or something that's not a decentralized product, it does show, iterations and who did what and ideas that were shared. So it's really good. And in a proprietary workflow, you don't have that.
Yeah. Well, and I think, Kyle, maybe this will give you a couple things to think about. You talk about the protocol. We spent that interoperability episode a couple episodes back talking about protocols and, like having open standards and shared kind of protocols that not like the person who develops them, is not necessarily going to be the winner, right? They're maybe not going to be the person who takes advantage, like HTTP, for instance, like these protocols, the W3C consortium, like the web standards that we have that kind of allow the messages and the information to kind of be sent and work across the web. I mean, being first, being early, having an opportunity to kind of be on the ground level of those things being accepted and adopted is, I guess, in and of itself a win. And maybe that's how the market takes advantage of this. I just wonder, because I know those incentives always matter, when it comes to technology.
Imagine standards that'll definitely be developed where when there's a artificial intelligent computation, there's a trail to where that data, like what was your contribution. It doesn't necessarily mean like protecting your data from other AIs or anything like that, but simply standardizing it and putting a system where you have equity in that work, like that process. And I mean, we're definitely going to see stuff like that. That's going to really incentivize people to interact with the like systems that adhere to something like that. The same way that when we talk about interacting with web apps, you get a green lock icon. If you don't get that, now that's a standard. There could be another system, but every browser just doesn't do that. You're going to get a warning page. It'll be we'll see things like that in the way our data is collected and aggregated. Right now, we don't see anything. Nobody has any idea, unless they're a data scientist at one of these big companies. And we really need transparency there. And blockchain's a great way to make that happen.
Yeah, amen to that. At Twin Protocol, that's exactly what we're doing. Twin Protocol allows you to upload your cloud data, or maybe your Zoom meeting data, or your Otter AI transcriptions, and create your own personal AI. We call it Pay, and then you can basically tokenize that and lend that to other AIs that come together. And actually started a patent process around that, and you'll get paid for your thoughts that are injected into the AI. So. Totally, that was really insightful, and we're on that path, Kyle. I think that's individually owning your own data that can become training data for others is a great way to help people get involved, to monetize it for the decentralized era, and to make a smarter AI.
Yeah, I saw this tweet yesterday actually that really caught my attention because it talked about kind of some of the trends that were coming in the space, and it made an interesting point about why memberships and small communities were going to become even more important, because like if these AIs are scraping the entire web, well, the only way to then create value is to protect your information from those general purpose AIs, and like you said, adapt it for your own, license your own, like AI service or your own product or your own like chat interface for this proprietary data that's generated by these communities, by these networks, by these nodes, and then licensing those out into the public sphere, right? And so if you had, let's say, the top 50, 100 analysts in finance or crypto or whatever, and they're working together to curate a newsletter or some kind of thing, and they want to train an AI on that, maybe they can then license that technology to other people. So I thought it's interesting to see how kind of as community grows and as technology grows and as people start to figure out how do we build on this internet, on this thing, all this technology exists now, but how do we use it as people? I think that goes back to the mass adoption. When like to reach mass adoption, the incentives have to be there for the average person to get online, to participate in one of these systems, to somehow do an activity that then results in them being rewarded in some way or having some positive outcome for their society or for their culture or for their whatever. And I think that those are the big steps that we're starting to see here as, products like this and as people figure out how do you leverage these technologies,
I totally agree with you. Matter of fact, to that end, it starts with a wallet, right? To be able to store your thoughts, store your NFTs, store your tokens, store your immutable data, and being built on the UPAP protocol at Wire, interop is the only way to go there. So you can bring your data from all these disparate blockchains and all these disparate dApps that are being created into one place that you can easily manage and own. So I think that's really key, is having that interop and coming back to that and bringing it down to the wallet. And I also agree with you that gamification in a Web 2 model to start, accumulate points, redeem those points for cryptocurrency. This is the path that we're taking. You don't always need to redeem your points for cryptocurrency or tokens. You can go IRL, you can go NFTs, you can go metaverse. So I think we need to broaden our scope and not force fit people just strictly Web3, always tokenized, but IRL is important, metaverse is important, and the redemption path is important. So you nailed it with what you said, I believe.
Well, we're seeing a
I
lot
think,
of... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I want to say it's interesting. Like I'm seeing parallels to what happened in the music industry in like the late 90s, early 2000s. But it's almost like flipped, where big record labels are now our intellectual property is our data. And there's going to need to be like a lot of, interesting arguments and regulatory things that will happen in the future. But essentially, if you look at what happened at the end of that, people go for ease of use. Like when Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Music created subscription services, dealt with the intricate, complicated ways royalties needed to work. It doesn't. You can still go use a torrent software or some peer-to-peer software to pirate music or whatever, but that's a lot of work. And so everybody literally, like, I don't think anybody does that anymore, just because it's so easy to, even for free, watch an ad and you get all the music. So really aggregate data from a system that's decentralized, where people are incentivized in multiple ways to contribute to that, will outweigh any siloed system in the long run.
Yeah, that I agree with. The network system is untouchable. Like a properly connected network. Yeah, and if that's decentralized, if the backbone of that is powerful enough to withstand taking out any single node, that the network continues living. I think that's how it should be. Like it shouldn't be contingent. There shouldn't be a single critical path to any of this stuff. And I mean, the internet was promised to be this thing that was gonna, create abundance and wealth and blah blah, et cetera, et cetera. And then it just became the biggest slot machine for attention we've ever built as society. And it's become this perversion of just spying on people and manipulating people and getting people to talk back and forth and fight each other. And like advertising is the biggest revenue model on the entire thing. And it's like, what are we doing?
It was also the playground for training data that now injected into OpenAI and ChatGPT, empowering Bing is arguing with people. So you look at this is like a natural evolution of tech and humanity, if you will. So the training data that we accumulated over time is now being used to train the AIs that we're so mystified about, at the present.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's a greater purpose, I guess, is that we're not fully aware of yet that is happening.
No, I completely agree. It's so funny to me though. I think Bing now taking market share in search, Google probably would have paid. Microsoft probably would have paid a lot more than what they invested into OpenAI to make that happen.
Bargain, it seems. But look at this. You look at Facebook, which was Meta now, and in the recent earnings report, or at least the recent investor call, Zuckerberg didn't really mention metaverse as much. They talked about AI. So even the FANG powers are scrambling to get back because they don't want to be left behind.
Yeah.
So it's such a movement now. Microsoft, right? Why didn't IBM do this? They could have come all the way back, for like a ninth inning Kirk Gibson swing to get back into it, but they didn't do it. So Microsoft was a beautiful move. I agree with you. It's underpriced now.
Yeah. And Microsoft's been making lots of moves. I mean, what they're doing with Teams, the unification of that interface, where they kind of taken the best of lots of different apps and blended them all into one experience that's just nice and easy to use. That they just, some of the innovations they've done on the PC side with the machines they're building. I don't know. I just think in general, there's a number of things that they've been doing good over the last few years that, I don't know, you'd never can count anyone out. And I think we'll see a bunch of people popping up out of nowhere with this. Anytime you see an emerging tech like this, you're just going to see it all over the place. You're going to see teams popping up where you're just like, who are they? What are they? How did they get? What the,
Yeah, I agree. Even at Hanson Robotics and Sophiaverse, which is Sophia the robot's metaverse that's coming, we think we have a great opportunity to leverage that brand of trust because people trust Sophia. She was born, 6 years ago to basically be an intermediary between humanity and this intelligent AI and help to do it in a beneficial way. So, they're super excited with Hanson Robotics, Sophia the robot, and the Sophiaverse to be that brand that helps to aggregate all this information through what they're calling the sentience wallet to store all your personal training data. But the next trillionaire is going to be AI based, as we know, and we're going to see the next Zuckerberg come up out of this era from nowhere probably. And you're already seeing it with a little bit with OpenAI. Look at, it's now the tech darling, rightfully so. So the world's anybody's oyster at this point.
Yeah, I agree. We have a couple people, I don't know, they're saying UPAP plus twin protocol equals Cyberdyne.
Well, the interrupt side of that, yeah.
Yeah. So let's kind of start winding the conversation down with, taking a look at emerging trends, things to look at. If somebody's watching this video and they're thinking like, okay, that's all good and well, but what does that mean for me? Or what should I be looking out for over the next few months type of thing? Like, let's kind of bring this high level conversation we've been having, this kind of general view of the space, and let's tie it back to like what's happening right now. What's interesting in the next 6 months? What should people be paying attention to? And I don't mean this in the context of like, what's the next coin to invest in or what's the next hot, like financial tip, but what tangible can we expect to see from this space over the next 6, 12, 18 months?
Yeah,
Kyle, if you want me to go first, I can, or you, whatever best.
Well, I'll just say like this is what we're seeing just with ChatGPT is probably about 20 times more effective than like the cybernetic relationship we have with search engines right now. So with that, I have like a really tight understanding of how powerful that is. I was pretty young when I adopted and had a really good understanding of how search works and took advantage of that to really find and consume a lot of information. So you multiply that by 20. I mean, there are going to be like these next generations coming up that'll have these tools. It's going to be totally different how the amount of power that individuals will be able to wield with access to information with context and the things that we're seeing here.
Yeah.
Big trends there. On my side, I mean, for me, we've talked a lot about it. Emerging is converging. So that's converging tech. So we've seen up to $2 trillion in crypto market value be created, right? It's down now, right? It's around $1 trillion, but at its high point, it was $2 trillion. Still a pittance compared to IRL real estate, which is at 253 trillion globally, which is, it's a fraction of that. And if you've watched the crypto markets lately, you've seen an explosion in converging tech. AI and blockchain is doing very well. So the $2 trillion in value that was created was basically a use case on top of blockchain called cryptocurrency. You take finance, you decentralize it, you come up with cryptocurrency, 2 trillion. What about when you combine AI with blockchain? What about if Apple smart glasses release soon, and that starts the Netscape revolution of AR, VR? You're going to have an AR, AI, blockchain convergence. So I think we need to look at converging tech across all of Web3, blockchain being the database, AR, VR being an interface, metaverse being an interface, humanoid robots helping in IRL, AI being the kind of the kingpin of all of it, right? So wherever you're going to see AI integrated, you're already seeing it. The valuations of AI companies, aka $30 billion valuation at OpenAI, after a few years through its birth, where you're going to see these converging tech. You take blockchain, AI, blockchain, AR, VR, blockchain, metaverse. I think it's about converging tech in the near future. First, just two things: AI, blockchain, already exploding, but eventually AI, blockchain plus AR, VR, AI, blockchain plus robotics. That's where the opportunities are, I believe. Converging tech.
Yeah. Right on. I'm wondering if there's any questions from the audience. Anything you guys would like to ask Bill or Kyle or myself as we wind down the conversation here. I see some folks in the chat. We're talking about wanting to they're saying let it rip, Kyle. They wanted you to, let's see what it say. Give us the meat and bones of wire was the specific comment. And they said, let it rip. And so just as a heads up, we are next week going to be doing a deep dive. Speaking of what's next, we're going to be doing a deep dive into how wire works. Kyle shared with me a conversation he had last week with some technical person from a team that we're talking to on one of the collaborations. It was like a 2-hour deep dive on the interoperability stuff, kind of from a real technical deep dive with diagrams and everything. And I told Kyle, hey, we should probably do this on the stream. We talked to the team. We think that would be a good thing. People have been asking for that. So we won't have a guest next week. It'll be Kyle and I, maybe Ken, doing just a deep dive into the backbone. We may bring someone technical in to just ask questions, because the conversations are always good when Kyle has a little bit of technical friction or somebody kind of asking questions at specific points to get clarity. And so I think that's what the conversation will revolve around. I think that's what's exciting for me as we talk about what's next, is that this is really come into life. I think in this next round of crypto, utility is the driving force, whereas the last few cycles have kind of been about speculation and almost like a lottery style game. And I think this next time people are, their BS detectors are way high. With the FTX scandal and with some of the other frauds that we've seen, there's a lot of fear because of the bridges that have been hacked over the last couple of years, and I think that's exciting to see how that gets plugged up. And again, the utility, you start to see the real utility behind these projects. You start to see communities coming together and figuring out how they're going to leverage these tools to leave their impact in the world. And that, to me, is what's exciting, is kind of just seeing this all actually emerge, and kind of some real fidelity starting to be added to this fairly blurry image that we've seen over the last few years, which is the emerging tech scene, crypto scene, AI, et cetera. So any final thoughts as we wind this down?
Yeah, I'll leave it at this. Our big focus is rolling out the interoperability layer, and then dealing with the hardware infrastructure that we believe needs to be, trustless. And like you can validate what it's going to do all the way down to the hardware. General computation is like the amount of compute and the amount of bandwidth needed when all these new applications and technologies start to take advantage of blockchain more, needs to explode. And it can't happen, in the data centers of one company running on top of proprietary softwares from, two companies that make chips. So it's a big problem, and we've made a lot of awesome progress, and we've gotten like a really, what I feel is a great, starting point for that server platform that can be validated in that way. So I'm really excited just to kind of continue these conversations with partners we're trying to bring on to expand, because we need like lots of different areas and types of compute beyond general, especially like edge, and how does that make sense for the everyday user?
Yeah, compute power is going to be a real limiting factor, isn't it? So I'm glad that you're looking after that. I'm a big fan of Wire and building multiple projects on it. So I'm looking forward to it being as efficient as possible. So thanks for solving those problems. I just appreciate the time, guys. Thanks for having me on, and glad to share some of the things I'm seeing in the market. And I hope that the people that are watching this can reach out to me. I'd love to hear from them and get their feedback.
Yeah.
And just got to constantly ingest feedback so that we can make the changes we need to make to be the best we can. And I completely agree that we're in the era of utility, and that's going to be important for the crypto and blockchain industry to show that it's of value.
Yeah.
So thanks again.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on with us. In the link of the description of this YouTube video is a link to Bill's Twitter, to my Twitter, to Kyle's Twitter. We're going to throw your website up there, and actually, if you want to send me any other links you have, we're happy to throw those in the video description again, so that anybody watching this now or into the future can kind of hang out and connect with you. Like you said, reach out on Twitter, connect with any of us. Feel free to ask questions as we go. We'll be back here every Thursday, kind of what we do, Wire live stream. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We'll catch you all next week.
Take care, everybody.